Jen.
And I'm Morgan.
And we're pastors at Calvary, and we have created a church-wide curriculum on Sabbath.
So several years ago, we started toying around with what it would look like to do a full congregational Sabbath. And each year, shockingly enough, other things came on the calendar, and it kept getting pushed and pushed. Mm-hmm. And finally, this last year, we realized this is something that we felt throughout the congregation, just needing a chance to kind of explore what is Sabbath. It's a term we use in the congregation and in the church frequently, and yet we don't actually deconstruct it or figure out what are the barriers or even celebrations around Sabbath.
And honestly, I would say this is something I really need in my own life. This is one of the commandments. Remember the Sabbath and keep it holy, and it's pretty much a commandment that I could say I break every week. So as a pastor, I haven't figured it out. As a person, I haven't figured out how to keep Sabbath and what that means. And I know it can be life-giving, both for me as an individual and I think for a community of faith, it can potentially be transformative.
So much of our lives, we want to find mindfulness. We want to find a slower pace. And yet everything else is telling us, continue to add, or there's not enough hours in a day. And yet that can produce this feeling of shame or guilt when we don't take that pause, when we don't take that moment to reflect and find Sabbath. Our hope with this study is to deconstruct all those myths around what makes Sabbath proper and really say, maybe you can only do it for a moment a day. Maybe you can't even do it once a week. Maybe you can do it once a month. Maybe for some folks, it's twice a year that you have these important Sabbath moments. How do we actively engage community in such a way that we're able to really honor not producing in some capacity? Not just from our jobs, but from things that don't give us life or allow us to feel fulfilled.
I think we put spiritual practices in a box. Mm-hmm. And I think Sabbath is no different. And to be honest, Scripture presents us a very clear picture of what Sabbath was in that context, and it's pretty defined and it has boundaries around it, and it had a very distinct purpose. And our hope is that we can learn about what that purpose was for the people of God back then, how it helped to give life to a community and to neighbors and to self, but then to take that and extrapolate it into our lives today.
So just as Sabbath is not a one-size-fits-all, we realized that we needed to make this curriculum not a one-size-fits-all. So whether you want to study it on your own at home or maybe with your family or friends, maybe a GPS group wants to take it up collectively or a church school class, we have made it in such a way that you can be able to do it on your own or in a group. We also, as pastors, will be hosting a Tuesday night option, even if you're doing it at home but want to have a chance to discuss and process. We will be hosting those during the curriculum series.
So the curriculum we've created is set up in a few sections. It really starts with grounding in Scripture. So we're going to be looking at the roots of Sabbath in the Old Testament and then into the New Testament, both focusing on how it plays a role in Jesus' ministry and also in the life of the early church. Then we start to look at how theologians, early Christians, talked and looked at Sabbath. And also we're going to recognize that we are theologians, and we'll invite you to create your own theology of Sabbath. And then we move into what are the actual practical things that we do on a daily basis that could make up our own practice of Sabbath with ourselves and with our families. And then we'll kind of compare that to our theology that we've created and see how those match or where we need to make adjustments. And then the final part of the curriculum leads us into a church-wide conversation on what Sabbath will mean for us at Calvary. As we study this in January and February, we really hope you will find a way to engage with us, either individually or in a group, because we will be carrying this theme throughout Lent and also into Eastertide. And our ultimate goal with this whole study is just to find a way to access the gifts that Sabbath have for us. Mm-hmm. As people trying to make our way in the world, and also as a community of faith trying to make a deeper impact in the world.
What did you say?